What's up, y'all? I am here with my sister, Emily Guy Birkin. She does not use a hyphen.
I'm here with my sister, Tracie Guy Decker, and she does use a hyphen.
And together we are Lightbringers, where we illuminate the deeper meaning of the crime-solving devil TV show. And you bet your ass we're overthinking it.
So much overthinking, especially this week.
Yeah, I got a lot to say.
So do I.
So today we're talking about 307 and 308 off the record, and Chloe does Lucifer.
Yes.
So let's take them in order.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll start with, you were just telling me that we had thought that maybe off the record was pushed forward out of season two, but now in rewatch, we're thinking maybe not.
Yeah, well, because I used to know which four were from season two that got pushed to season three. And then I think it was last time I was naming them and I came up with five.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If I included this one, and I realized, I think, no, this was always intended to be in season three. And you can tell because it bookends nicely.
Yeah. They talk to one another with Reese's death.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that, makes it clear to me that even though this is a pattern interrupter of an episode, which is true of the other four, it was intended to be in this season.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. It is definitely a pattern interrupt. It's really interesting in terms of the story construction, in terms of some of the things that I love about the show, i.e. the dramatic irony when we know something that the characters don't, especially in rewatch. When there's even greater dramatic irony because I know the reveal at the end. But even without that, just watching it was solid storytelling.
It's an amazing story.
Like just really solid storytelling from, there's several reveals. And also there's dramatic irony. So because from the beginning, we know that Lucifer is the man who's sleeping with Reese's wife. But it takes a minute for it to be revealed that Linda is the ex-wife. Right. And then there just was several moments of
and the fact that it took Lucifer until the very end.
Like the very end to realize that Reese was talking about him. Yeah. Even to the way that once you have seen the whole thing and get the final reveal that this is in fact a hell loop, realizing that Lucifer is explaining in the hell loop to Reese how hell works. I don't know, there's something so meta about that loop that is really satisfying.
It really is, particularly when with the ends where you pull out of that door. And so he could get up and walk out, and he knows it because it was revealed to him
on some level. He knows it.
So it's a heartbreaking episode in a lot of ways, because even in his monstrousness, Reese is a sympathetic character.
It's true.
Because he does become monstrous. And he only realizes it when Linda gets hurt. Not even when that innocent woman dies of the poisoning does he recognize his own monstrousness. It's only when the one person he truly cares about gets hurt because of his actions that he can see it. And that actually, it struck me that when he went to see the serial killer, Alvin Kapitsky, the serial killer had more self-knowledge than Reese did. He was more able to be I knew this day would come.
And conscience, because he said, I'm on my meds now. I'm trying to be better, but do what you got.
It's really hard. Yeah. So he was the fact that in that interaction, it was the supposedly stable like I don't want to use the word sane and insane or anything like that, but
Right.
the supposedly stable person, the one who did not have tinfoil over his windows, who was baiting the unstable one to return to his like evil practices.
At that point, no, he does know that he's the devil at that point, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Alvin Kapitsky even is somewhat sympathetic, even though what he did was horrific,
totally warped. But yeah, they made him a serial killer who had the motive was I don't want to use the word sympathetic because it's a step too far, but comprehensible. Yeah. It wasn't just like petty jealousy or, it was a reaction to an injustice of sorts. And obviously murder is unjust.
Yes. Yeah.
Like
nothing that any of those people did deserved death.
Right. But the motive was actually like a warped sense of some sort of justice or truth, as opposed to just like in the future, we meet a serial killer who's just psychopathic. And there's nothing nice and righteous that's been warped. He's just warped. Right.
And when he says, like, I'm trying to be good, it's really hard. And like, he has the self-knowledge, he has the understanding to recognize that what he was doing was not acceptable. I mean, to say the least. Right. There's something very similar between Reese and the serial killer. And that is, in some ways, a refusal to accept something that just is, that you don't want. And I've been thinking about that a lot with Reese, just in part because I've been thinking about how human beings respond to awful or unpalatable truths. And you can either accept them and continue and move on with that information, or you can say, I reject this. There must be a way around it. And so past 2 years have shown that there's a lot of people.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're going to overthink it, since that's what we do, like as you're talking, I'm realizing not accepting truth is what causes our suffering. That is the cause of suffering, and which is really interesting now that I'm like layering that over Lucifer. Like, I think the cause of Lucifer's suffering is often that he refuses to accept what is absolutely true.
We see that in the next episode, although I don't want to get there quite yet. So I want to take this a little bit deeper, and it's going to be a little dark, so apologies.
Okay.
So I've been thinking about this episode in terms of the events of last week. We're recording this a week after the Uvalde tragedy. And so there's a couple of things that it brings up. Now, the refusal to accept truth, that is something that we have seen certain members of our culture fall to in the wake of these tragedies. Like, oh no, like good guy with a gun would have fixed this, or
even the horrific, like the Alex Jones, they were actors.
Yes.
The cognitive dissonance is such that like
the very first time I learned that there were Sandy Hook deniers, my first thought was sympathetic, because my first thought was like, if you could believe that, why wouldn't you? If you could believe that it was crisis actors, that it was a false flag, that it was a conspiracy, and there were children who died in fear. Like, okay. And it was only after I realized how far these people were willing to go to protect that truth in their heads that I realized, no, I can't have sympathy for someone who refuses to accept the truth. So I'm thinking about that in terms of with Reese, and how difficult and how frustrated Linda was. You see her she's trying to be as gentle as she can be, until she finally loses her temper and says, I've been patient because I care about you, but this is over. Stop, sign the papers. And even then he does it just to be able to get to the next tactic, get to the next strategy. And there is no negotiating or working with someone like that. And it's completely understandable why their marriage would fall apart. You know, and I have no doubt that they truly did care for each other and that he truly loved her and she truly loved him. But his inability to let go of anything would be impossible to live with. And I feel like we're seeing that on a larger scale in our society, where we have people who, for whatever reason, are encouraged to not accept the truth, and how difficult that is to live with.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that brought up. And then the other thing that this brought up is, again, specifically, it's not shootings in general, but the Uvalde shooting. The story from the police department has changed and changed and changed and changed. And I have seen some journalists talking about journalistic practice, which is that you treat police statements as not needing to be fact checked. Now, I'm not a journalist exactly. I'm journalist adjacent because I write about money. I didn't get a journalism degree, so I don't have like those best practices and things like that. But I do, you know, I do live in the world of, you know, if you have a quote, you have to, you know, fact check it and blah, 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 blah. And so I've been thinking about that fact and how I just accepted that. Like, I knew that that was part of what journalists do. And I was thinking about it in the interaction between Chloe and Reese, when she says to him, like, I do something that actually benefits the world. And considering the fact that there are so many abuses of power that are only brought to light because of people like Reese, it hits very different this week than it would have if we'd done this 3 weeks ago.
You know, it's interesting too, within this episode, thinking about that interaction of the cops and the journalists, which in this episode is definitely sort of antagonistic, as opposed to what you're talking about. But there's also very clear sort of performative nature to Chloe's behavior while Reese is paying attention. Like, you see her cringe at Lucifer's antics in ways that we are definitely meant to understand she's cringing because the reporter is there. She hands him the gloves and is like you always do. And he, no, I don't, tucks it in his pocket.
When she goes to find him and she's like, I need my sober consultants, although that may have just been because they were still early in their working. Come to think of it.
Right. Because that was
made
before
clear
she knew
he was a
it was only a few weeks. That's what he said. It was only a few weeks.
Yeah. And I think that might've been before she knew he was a journalist. But yes, there is very much a performative nature, which again, that hits different. And, you know, some of that is like, anytime you have a third party observing your work.
And for the showrunners, that was all about Chloe's character, right? Like, and, you know, I mean, they even say it out loud, like, oh, sure, former B movie actress, now with this kooky consultant, like, she's very aware of her image and how she comes off, and needing to like overcompensate for the fact that she took her top off when she was 19 or whatever. So like for the showrunners, that was all about like the character. But I do think it's interesting to look at it as a, you know, maybe a bit of a microcosm to the bigger issues that you're pointing to.
Well, and it gets to like one of the things that, I mean, I've been feeling just emotionally nauseated since last week. And one of the things that I have been spending time thinking about is the amount of propaganda I consume, and how if there's going to be a point in time where I can't watch Lucifer anymore, you know, and like I stopped watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, I can't watch
after
it
George
either.
Floyd was murdered, because I just couldn't watch it anymore. I can't, you know,
it's not funny anymore.
It's not funny. It's silly hijinks. As much as I love all of the actors and in the cast and everything, and the writing's pretty damn good too, and it's Michael Shore, who you and I both love, but I can't do it. I can't revisit it, and so, and just thinking about the amount of reverence that is just baked into our cultural DNA towards a state program that carries out extrajudicial killings with no consequences, and it traces its roots back to slave catchers.
Yeah.
Why, what, how?
Well, I think you know the why.
I know all of it, but it's also, it's, you know,
it's interesting that we don't have time to get into this, but I'm going to be thinking about this a little bit, because yes to all of those things. I'm thinking about the specific propaganda that I appreciate personally. And it is this mold, like Castle, which this is Castle. Lucifer and Castle are like the same show. It's just, you know, here he's the literal devil, and there he's a, you know, crazy murder mystery writer, but that sort of like free-spirited, you know, larger than life personality, not a cop consultant. And then the romance. And then the romance between the hard-boiled female detective and the free and wild whatever. And Zootopia is another piece of propaganda that I adore, which again, it's the same show, right? Nick Wilde is Lucifer.
He totally is.
And Judy Hopps is Chloe. Like,
she totally is.
It's this like, and this is the show. This is the version of propaganda that I really like, which I'm like, what is it? What do you call it when you put yourself into the,
Mary Sue?
Is that what, like,
with a self-insert, but the Mary Sue.
Yeah. Like, I wonder if, like, I think of myself as some sort of like hard-boiled, tough as nails kind of a.
Well, some of that, because now that you say that, you know, X-Files follows a similar pattern. And I think some of that is that we are, as Gen X women, were so starved for strong female characters growing up in a lot of ways, and starved of strong female characters who had like equal romantic partners. So my boys and I have been watching Star Wars. We watched the original trilogy. My eldest now wants to watch the other 6, and I'm like, yeah, no, we don't have to watch the other 6.
Such a snob.
Oh my goodness. At the point when Luke, you know, learns like he has a sister, and it's like, search your feelings. I'm like, it's the only other woman in the entire galaxy. We see one other woman in the entire 3 films. One. So like, yeah, of course that's a sister. Who else would it be?
Right. Because it's
never met another woman.
Well, his aunt, but he knows she's dead.
Okay, but she's dead. So yeah, I mean, like, so I'm thinking about, and then the Leia had this strong female character, but again, she was the only version we got to see, and she wasn't hard-boiled exactly.
She was strong, but she also, like, watching it now, this is totally far afield, but watching it now, like the caregiving that she is required to do, even as the toughest, like she, like the tough as nails stuff, like she has it to, you know, like, get out of my way, you walking carpet, or whatever the line is. But then, like, her whole friggin'
nerf herder,
her planet just got destroyed. Her planet. And she's comforting Luke over losing Obi-Wan, who he met yesterday.
3 days ago.
So, like,
that, I like, actually,
there's tough as nails, but then there's also this caregiving that she's required to do.
Everybody's mother. Yeah. When we got to that scene in A New Hope, I turned to my kids and I said, what she is doing is called emotional labor. Remember, she just lost her planet. And his friend, who he's only known a couple of days, has just died. It's really inappropriate that she should feel the need to comfort him. Yes.
Which is, you know, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, like Chloe actually tries to be a caregiver for Lucifer repeatedly.
She does.
Talk to me. Tell me what's going on. I can't help you if you don't talk to me.
Yeah. And you know what? There's that appeals to me too. Like my favorite Lucifer moments are when he's devastated, which is just like, how fricked up is that? I mean, like, and Reese, quite honestly, like his devastation is attractive, you know, in a weird way, in that, like, not that I condone or think that anything is okay with what he's doing. And I want him to freaking leave Linda alone. She clearly has made herself clear, but yet, you know, seeing like when his assistant's like, hey, your wife's in there, and he gets, oh, and
he fixes his hair,
and he's excited, and then that devastation after she's like makes herself clear, like there's something very, I don't know. I don't know how to describe it, but just it tugs.
It's a pathos, I think.
Yes.
And it's a specific kind of pathos that we have been trained to react
very much
to.
So. Yes.
Yeah. That's definitely social conditioning, that we would react to that specific pathos.
Yes. And I like, I don't know how to root that out. It's been there pretty deep.
Man.
So, to get back to this episode and the way that it's set up, and that like what we're talking about propaganda and things like that, I wonder if we and the generations that come after us are going to be more questioning of things. So I don't know if you can recall this, but I was like 4. I mean, I was tiny. I wanted to be a police officer for a short period of time. Do you have any memory of that?
I don't think so. Do you remember why? You often had like a very specific reason why you would want something.
I wanted to help people. And so I remember being at Mom's store and telling one of her customers that I want to be a police officer. And they're like, no, that means you'd have to carry a gun. Are you okay with that? And Mom was furious. She was like, she's a 4-year-old. And I have been thinking about that. Like that stuck with me. Like, you know, here it is 39 years later. And I remember that. And I am wondering, like, where did that come from? Was that just the general, like, kind of crap bullshit that people put on kids? Like, oh, you want to do that? You know, there's no money in it. Or, oh, you want to do that? Like, you know, you're going to have to do this. Or like, I'm like, maybe they're, you know, I very much doubt, because as I remember it, they were white customers of our mother's art gallery. I doubt they were very concerned about police brutality, but they could have been aging hippies. And I'm wondering, like, you know, if my kids were that little now and were saying they wanted to grow up to be a police officer, I know I would not be like, oh, honey, that would be great. I might say, oh, if you want to help people, you know, there's lots of helping professions. You know, there's social work and teaching, and like kind of steer them away, and have the deeper conversations as they get older. But I have been wondering about that, if the mystique is going to be changing in some way.
No question. I mean, it already is. Like there are recruitment problems in every single police department in a major city in this country. I think I know there are in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, okay. Yes.
I'm gonna bring us back quickly to the very end of this episode, off the record, because you mentioned it, the pan out when we see the room, and you have noted to me before, because in this episode, Lucifer says the doors aren't locked. You can leave anytime, and no one ever does. And this is the Redditor question. This is the question, the overthinking question that everybody's like, well, what happens to the psychopaths who feel no guilt? Right. And you have an answer because of this episode. So lay it on me.
So when you pan out, you see that there is no lock on this door. it's open, but there are doors that are locked.
They have
chains,
like
yes.
X's, chains
yes.
and X's.
So, so like that must have been, theoretically, that must have been what the goddess was stuck in.
Yeah, because when we see it, when he dies and he goes down there, we see the door open and like chains kind of hanging.
Yes. And then presumably people like, Hitler and Pol Pot and Mussolini and Dahmer,
just any sort of sociopath or psycho. I don't know the difference. So maybe one of them's not real and one of them is.
Oh, is that what it is? Yeah, one of them's not in the DSM and one of them is, and I can't remember which is which.
I don't know. But for the people for whom that switch is broken, that empathy switch, and they genuinely cannot or do not feel the empathy and guilt for hurting others. I mean, yeah, those people you just listed, I think are those people. And I think there are actually a lot more of them in
there's one that we know personally.
Unfortunately, that is true.
But she's not there yet though.
Yeah, I was thinking of somebody else. So there's at least two that we know personally, actually.
Oh, okay.
I think I just think that's a really interesting point, because that is the thing that like spins people up on Reddit about this vision of the afterlife. And at least subtly, the showrunners actually gave us an answer with those chains. So yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the other episode.
Chloe does Lucifer. Okay. Now this is the episode. I have a very low secondhand embarrassment tolerance. I think I've said that before in the episode where Lucifer is in the mental institution. That awful date I can't watch, but I sat through it for the rewatch. When he's coaching her at the top meet party, I cannot. Like I physically am like, no, I reject this.
She's like,
oh, I can't do it. And I know there are a bunch of people like, oh my God, it's so funny. I'm like, I feel like I'm dying watching that.
It's so funny.
It hurts so bad. That secondhand embarrassment is just like, I feel twisted up inside. And so like even this one, I was like, all right, I'll watch it because we're gonna be talking about it. I was like, nope, don't need to see it. Cannot do this.
Funny. I don't have that. I don't have the reaction to that one. I do get that. I definitely get that. That's why I was never a Seinfeld fan, because that's like the entire humor premise for the Seinfeld. I just can't. I can't. But this, for whatever reason, it didn't bother me so much. I guess because ultimately what that train wreck proves is that Chloe actually knows who she is and what she, like it. And so it actually like validates Chloe, despite the embarrassment. And so I guess maybe that's why it feels a little less inside twisty to me.
Yeah.
I will say the thing, like, as I'm overthinking it, this episode, it's got me thinking about, so like the ultimate truth that Lucifer doesn't want to accept in this one is that fancy, sophisticated people are not better in any way than boring shoes, and in some ways are worse. And that makes sense, sort of in the arc of the show and like how debaucherous and whatever fun-loving Lucifer is. And also, he is thousands of years old and spent most of that time in hell, where all of those sophisticated, fancy people, or I would think a large majority, especially of the ones who do end up there, are the frauds, right? So the sophisticated, fancy people that he would have known as souls in hell, he would have known were dumbasses, right? Who were just pretending.
I could see him saying like, well, those aren't actually just like, it's the no true Scotsman fallacy. It's like, oh, they're not really sophisticated, fancy people because they ended up here. If they were, they wouldn't have ended up here.
Maybe. I mean, maybe for sure. And that's what I've been playing in my head a little bit since I rewatched the second episode. That, and also just like holding on to the memory, the Monopoly and the face painting and the lollipops, which becomes actually a touchstone in the future, for that he comes back to, and thinking about this moment in sort of the arc of their friendship and romance, you know, where he ran away and then he, you know, and like just remembering too, as we talked about on the show, it's been several episodes now, but when that moment with the poisoner, serial killer who poisoned Chloe, when he was like, this is real, isn't it? You know, and then later when he was like, I will do everything in my power to fix this, and she says, I know, from her hospital bed, like the strength of that bond that has been tested and stretched and whatever, and then the sort of domestic pleasantness of the Monopoly game, and it's still platonic, and it's still like it's just, I'm not complaining, I'm just kind of holding all of it, like with this moment as a touchstone, which he starts to see, but not enough to actually like fully embrace it, because the final scene, he stole the little shoe piece, but we watch him take his robe off in the reflection on the on the piano with another woman, who he knows won't be interested in Monopoly. Or,
well, he, you know, I do feel like at this point in their relationship, his understanding is that they can't be together in any way other than platonically.
Right. Because, well, that's his understanding because of his
limiting beliefs.
Yeah. Because the way he's thinking about the fact that she was a miracle baby, that he believes. And actually, this, while we're overthinking it, his thinking that's the only way is actually, if we're going to be as generous as possible, him respecting consent. And recognizing that because she was created and put in his path, she's incapable of actually withholding consent, and therefore he cannot get it. Not authentic. She cannot give authentic consent because of the nature of her existence.
I like that view of it. You know, one thing I forgot to mention in the off the record, there's a very tiny moment when they find the guy, the plastic surgeon who has the scar on his face. And Dan is saying to Lucifer, like, that was good detective work. You realize that, you know, his scar made him resent the people around him. And Lucifer goes from smiling to like a very briefly, like, like his face falls. And it's, you know, he's connecting it to himself, like how, you know, his own face and all of that. And it's right after that he starts like brutalizing. You talk about police brutality, the plastic surgeon, and lets his face be seen by Reese, although he has no idea that Reese is there. So that connects to me with what's going on here. Is it's showing, like, now that was early on in the chronology of Lucifer's story,
right?
But it shows,
but we interacted it with it here.
But it shows his level of insecurity. And I feel like the whole like shoe versus top hat thing, I mean, obviously that's his insecurity, but it's like a reflection of, you know, like the only thing that makes me special is being fancy. And if I'm not fancy, I'm not special.
Worse than not special.
So I gotta say one thing, like, nothing against the actor who plays him, because I think he does a very nice job, but I do not find the guy playing Mac, you don't find him attractive, as attractive at all. And they put a picture of him next to Kim, and I was just like, I'm really not seeing where he's a pretty boy and she's like she's a plain Jane. Like, she looks pretty nice to me.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
so I'm like, I don't really, I'm not clear on this.
Okay.
Which
All
again, like, I don't want to give that poor actor a complex or
Well,
anything.
Thankfully, it's unlikely he will see it. Let's see this.
But I do love. Hey there, hi Mac. Did they let you keep any of the pictures of yourself or the head that looked like it had gum on it?
It looked like a Keith Haring painting, like come to life.
Weird.
It was
Yeah.
weird. It was very weird.
So, and then there was the Roy Lichtenstein version of his head.
Yeah, I like that one.
So I've noticed anytime you've got a character who's got lots of pictures of themselves, like him and Jensen Glory from Trip to Stabby Town, like that's just kind of, is that a common thing in LA? Is that
I don't know, but that is definitely shorthand for someone.
Yes.
A fraud.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's something in Chloe Does Lucifer that I want to talk about. I mean, there are other things. There's several things, but there was one thing that bugged me. Okay, and that was the I've turned so many men gay. They call me the Skillet.
Mm-hmm.
Like that whole like joke line that came up several times. Like Oscar Wilde was straight when Lucifer met him. Like, nope, doesn't work. Like, that's another one of those. They want their cake and eat it too. Like we saw in the Baby Carrot episode. Like, that's not representation. I actually found that a little offensive. Like just the whole, not that he has sex with men, but that he would talk about it in that way. It just was gross. That actually really kind of bothered me. Which I don't think I saw on the first go through.
The Skillet line did not bother me the first time, but the thing about Oscar Wilde really did. So it's just like, don't take away from this icon
who's he's an icon to so many today as a role model, and also it is who he was, and he suffered for it.
Yes, that's it too. Like if it had been, I don't know, like Liberace. Well, I mean, Liberace suffered for it too. I mean,
not in the same way. Not in the same way.
Obviously, but he lived closeted his entire life.
No, he definitely suffered. But
not like Wilde.
Not like Wilde did. I mean, like Wilde was imprisoned in things. Like he really was tortured by the state in some ways for his sexual orientation, and so to just, I don't know, it just felt glib, and also it felt too like, as much as the show talks about like, don't say the devil made me do it, like they're gonna say that the devil made me gay. What? Like the whole ugly. Like that is ugly. I mean, the fact that queer folks are born queer and they're made queer by God, like, and that's beautiful. Like,
and they could very easily have made it a joke about like sexuality being a spectrum, and like I helped them find this side of the spectrum that they didn't realize was there. Instead of it being like I flipped Skillet. Them.
I didn't. That one that really stuck in my craw. This go around. I feel like there was one. Oh, and then the other thing that maybe we could talk about is Ella and Charlotte.
Yes. I feel like Ella would have questioned the shadow program a little bit more.
A little sooner.
Yeah. Like, you're a forensic scientist. I mean, think it through.
Well, also an employee of the LAPD. Like, could she just go to the lieutenant and be like, sir, is this a thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I guess Tom, what's his name? Hollander, Wellinger, whatever his name
Welling.
is.
It's like Ellis, but take off the S and add a W and an NG.
Whatever. That dude must have had the day off or something when they were filming.
Well, they did say he's still recovering.
Oh, recovering from the gunshot. Right. He did. It's true. He did take a shotgun blast to the torso. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I'll buy it.
So,
I'll buy
but
it. I'll buy it.
Even then, like, am I going to get an email about this? Is there
Yeah.
anything official? Like, do I have to fill out any paperwork to show that
Show me your ID?
time? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do think it's interesting, like, because again, we're getting to know the real Charlotte. We never got to
No,
meet her.
we never met her.
But we are finding like she takes shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what Ella is her shortcut. Like,
yeah, to goodness.
I do think it's interesting. The visual gag of Ella trying to get in the elevator before Charlotte gets there. Well, first of all, there's the huge number of people, so she has to wait for them, and then there's an old man with a walker that she's pushing. And then when Charlotte catches up with her, and the cop's like, hold the elevator, and is like gonna close the door, like, I'm not Mother Teresa, and Ella is like annoyed at her. I'm like, you were doing the exact same thing. It's just a very funny.
It is.
moment.
It is. Although in Ella's defense, Ella was trying to avoid a specific person.
Yes.
And Charlotte's like, I'm not gonna wait for a stranger.
Yes.
There's a little bit of a difference there.
Fair. Totally fair. I do appreciate that Ella, when Charlotte is like, I'm trying to be better. And Ella's like, okay, well, you know, it was good you helped us catch a killer. And she's like, yeah, I stole the paperwork. Like, E for effort. You know? So like, I appreciate that, because you do kind of have to, like, it's baby steps. It's baby steps. If you're used to cutting corners, it's going to be hard to say you got to do everything straight and narrow.
Yeah.
That I also really love I cannot count the number of times I allegedly helped them make that mistake. What?
I said allegedly. Just help her deliver that line so beautifully.
Oh man,
it's pretty awesome.
She's a hell of an actress. Yeah,
she really is. She's pretty awesome.
So, but yeah, I appreciate that pairing, just because they are very much an odd couple.
Yeah, they are.
And even just like, it's a much greater difference, but Trisha Helfer in her heels standing next to Ella. It's funnier when it's Linda, because she's only like 5'1", and I think Ella's like 5'4", but it's still just like, are you the same species?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, totally.
You're so tall. You are
totally.
so short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other pairing that we get out of this episode is a Menadil and Linda kind of reconnecting and
I so appreciate that he goes to help her out, because
the moment he
learns.
hears, like he leaves Lucifer in order to go check on her. Yeah. Which yeah.
And to give Lucifer credit, when he has an appointment, like, he says, I want to know how you're doing.
Yeah.
And like, and that's actually another thing from another like little moment from Off the Record, when Linda tells Reese in front of Lucifer, he's my friend, and you can see that he's like, I am. And so like, it's clear he takes that seriously. Like he
we all want the approval of the people that we admire.
Yeah.
Even the devil.
Even the devil. Yeah. In some ways, especially the devil.
Yeah. At least in this incarnation.
This
literary incarnation. Yeah. All right. We've been overthinking it for quite a while now. I'm not watching the time, but I feel like it's been a minute. So perhaps we should transition to some fluff and then say goodnight.
Some fluff. Yes, definitely.
What you got?
So, well, I've got two things. The first is that when Lucifer in Off the Record goes to talk to Reese, when he's like, you know, I'm just gonna punch him in the face, and like, he thinks that Reese wants to be with him, and he's like, I'm not interested, not because you're a man, because I don't find you attractive. And like, there's a part of me that's like, first of all, how dare you? Reese Getty is a good-looking man. Look at those eyes. So funny. Dare you? Like, the thing is, like, it's I mean, Tom Ellis and whoever that actor is, not exactly in the same league, but still, look at those eyes. really nice.
All right.
That's my first thought. It's just like, you know, you don't have to insult him, A, and B, like, what is wrong with you? He's a good-looking man.
Well, I mean, the insult gets even more because he's like, you know, there's a chubby guy over there who looks lonely.
Your reach around.
Yeah, right. That's what it was. Oh, thank God the kid was not in the room for that.
Mom, what's a reach around?
Ask your dad. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll take that as some fluff. What else you got? You got anything else?
So the only other fluff is when I rewatch, I generally skip Chloe Does Lucifer because of the embarrassment factor. And it's just there's only a couple of scenes in it that I really like. I love the beginning scene and the unicorn. And so I'll watch that and I'll maybe fast forward to Linda and a Menadil on the beach and you know, that's about it. But my favorite Lucifer gif or gif, I'm agnostic on pronunciation, is the one where he's pretending to be Lucinda and he goes
flips his hair.
Flips his hair. That is, and I think I've sent that to you in our text messages. Probably. By the way, watchers, I want you to know that I randomly will look at my phone and my sister will have sent me like thirst traps of Tom Ellis just out of nowhere. No commentary, no message other than that. It's just like, hey.
Because so you remember that Avenue Q song, The Internet is for Porn? Do you remember that song? Yes. So there's a version of that song in my head that goes, Twitter is for Tom Ellis. Like I follow all these like Lucifer fans and they just find these amazing photos or drawings that they've done that are, oh my God, holy shit, not safe for work.
Yeah, that too.
And I just like, and I'll just be like random, like I open Twitter and like, there it is. And I can't keep that to myself, people.
Well, and I am not in any way complaining. I mean, I want to make that clear. This is not anything I want Tracie to stop doing. Keep them coming. It's just so funny because, like, I don't know, 25 years ago when I was starting college, I just can't imagine someone saying, you know, 25 years from now, your 46-year-old sister will be sending you pictures of
an actor from a show you both like
on your pocket computer that can access anything in the world, anything at all.
Oh man.
This will be something she does regularly. That's just not something I would have expected to come about.
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
As does Lucifer. So, do you have any fluff to add?
No, I could not possibly follow that. No way in hell or heaven.
Or Lux.
Yeah. Whew.
Oh, all right. Whew. So I think we overthunk it enough.
We have overthunk it and then some.
We done overthunk those bad boys.
All right, y'all. We will see you next week.
See you next week.